So yesterday, Bernie Sanders had a little bit of a keeping it real moment with CNN reporter Manu Raju, who was trying to ask him about his timeline in terms of making a decision about his presidential run while Bernie was in town to focus on the, impending and unfolding crisis that we are obviously dealing with right now. Let's take a listen to what Bernie had to say.
Sir, what are you saying to your supporters? There have been all this flurry today. Can you say?
Some of what was said is just untrue. We sent out a statement.
What's your time frame?
Stop with this. I'm dealing with a global crisis. We're dealing with it, and you're asking me these questions, right?
You're running for president, so.
Well, right now I'm running. Right now I'm trying to do my best to make sure that we don't have an economic meltdown and that people don't die. Is that enough for you to keep me busy for today?
So, Saagar, I feel like this is sort of like a Rorschach test for how you feel about Bernie, because I saw that and I was like, thank you, Jesus. Where has this Bernie Sanders been the whole time? Right? What did you think?
I know. I did the same. I tweeted after that. I was like, wow, imagine if this Bernie Sanders had been there for Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren or any of his other opponents. It is funny.
Or
I think
the
you're
press,
exactly
for
right.
that matter, too.
I mean, that's the thing is that if you look at this and you're like, oh my gosh, an attack on the free press and he's losing it. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I thought it was perfect, which is like, why are you trying to ask like stupid political questions in the middle of a global crisis and harping on a fake Axios report? That's how we should remember that this all began, right? Is that Axios mistakenly reported that he was suspending his campaign. I mean, I feel for his advisors. It's probably not a great time for them right now. And they'd already put out their statement saying that he's going to go back to Burlington. He's going to reassess the campaign. Then they're like, oh my gosh, he's going to suspend the campaign. It turned out he was going to suspend his Facebook ads. That's all it was.
Oh,
and then,
my God.
of course, you know how these things go. They go viral. I bet their phones were blowing up. They had to send all these tweets and all these reporters were hounding him. And I get where he's coming from, which is that his point is, look, I'm trying to solve this economic crisis, proposing, multi-$1,000s a month. And then the Democratic leadership is the one who's putting the kibosh on that, right? That's what we should be talking about right now. But, CNN is what it is.
They all are what they are. I mean, first of all, there's a hypocrisy, obviously, on several levels. First of all, as you point out, the fake news report that led to this moment in the first place, like a failure of journalists and journalism, that not only, was Axios to blame, but there were a lot of high-level reporters who were continuing to surface, continuing to tweet this out after the campaign had come out and said, this is false, this is untrue. Second, you'll recall when Elizabeth Warren was taking her time to assess her campaign in a way that was very damaging, actually damaging to the cause of getting healthcare for all, Green New Deal, progressive values. The message then was give her time and space, right? You can't rush her into things, which I actually agree with, right?
Yeah.
That was the message coming out then. But now, when there aren't primaries for 3 weeks, suddenly it's like, Bernie must drop out now. Every instant that he wastes is like a devastation to the planet, which is just completely absurd. And then the third level of hypocrisy is, remember when Joe Biden had that moment where he yelled at a union worker in Michigan and called him a horse's ass and said he's full of shit and all of this? And people were like, oh, this was the greatest moment of his campaign. But when it's Bernie rightfully getting agitated with a reporter who's asking stupid questions, then, the tone police are on in full force. They can't believe that he'd use that kind of language. Heavens no. It's just,
Krystal,
these people are so ridiculous.
You're highlighting the problem here. You're allowed to condescend to a union worker who believes in gun rights and who works in a factory. You're not allowed to condescend or be mean to a CNN reporter. That's the dichotomy. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's really this, and all the pearl clutching is really about, it's like in-class signaling that we're all protected, that if one of them comes after us, that we will protect our own and call it out and say he's mean or he's angry or whatever. It's like, yeah, I think he should be angry about what's happening in the global economy right now and for millions of people's lives, and squabbling about, and again, I think this question came after the report had been debunked by Bernie Sanders' communications director, saying this is an absolutely not true report. So again, I mean, the whole thing is utterly ridiculous given how much that they've put forward and, the statement, and it just shows you the height of trying to get a headline, in the middle of the Capitol Hill hallway when somebody's trying to talk about real issues. As somebody who, I know so many people who are so frustrated with that, and a lot of members of Congress and people I will talk to, They won't even stop in the hallways anymore because they know that they're not going to get good questions from the press.
Well, and it's not only a disservice to like Bernie Sanders or members of Congress, it's a disservice to the public. Because if you ask anyone who's out there right now, who's stuck in their house, who's worried about their job, who's worried about their health, they don't care whether Bernie Sanders is making his decision today or tomorrow or next week or the week after that. They don't care. They want to know, what are you going to do? What's going to happen with my job? Do I get unemployment benefits? How long do I have to be out? When are these checks coming that I've been hearing about? Like, what is going on and what are you going to do to make sure I can survive this period? That's what they actually care about. And so that you waste the time of someone who is incredibly influential, who has a real voice in this, who's one of the few people on the Democratic side that's showing actual leadership on the issue, that you waste their time with this kind of question is a disservice to everyone involved, frankly. And I think Bernie was totally right and righteous to take offense to it and respond in the forceful manner in which he did.
He should have done it more. I would have loved to have seen it more. And I think this was on display actually yesterday in the White House press corps. And what I think it was like one of the third that people keep asking stuff like, how would you rate your performance on a scale of 1 to 10? And I'm like, okay, I know what you're trying to do here, which is that you want him to say 10 because it's Trump. He's always going to say 10. And they'll be like, look, you said 10. Well, everything is a disaster. And I understand the want from that. But at the same time, as you point out, how about the details of the $1 trillion package? Are we going to have strings attached to the airline industry? When are the checks going to start to go out? What is the exact process that the IRS is determining in order to get these checks to begin flowing? I mean, there's going to be a second check. What is the deterministic amount? How are we going to do it by state and local poverty levels? Again, there's so many different questions here, right? Which is that if they're thinking about means testing, then how that means test works is probably the single most important question. I didn't hear a single person ask that question in the White House briefing room yesterday. And it just, as somebody who used to work there, this is what always frustrated me about the place, which is it's all about trying to get stupid cable news bites. In this first case, too, what we're talking about, than it is about trying to actually inform people about what's going on.
You got it. And look, they can ask their questions. That's fine. Sure, but these politicians are allowed to respond in the way that they think is appropriate. Yeah. And I believe that in this instance, the American people would be behind Bernie Sanders on this particular issue. All right, folks, we will have more Rising for you after this.